Okay, so we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. This is Anthony Alaka with Torrey Hills Capital, and I want to welcome you to the Ventripoint Diagnostics podcast for February 4th, 2021. I want to wish everyone a happy new year. I hope you're all doing well under the circumstances, and here's hoping that things will start to normalize again in the coming months. The company we're talking with today is fairly new to the Torrey Hills Capital family of companies. We believe their technology is a game changer in the medical imaging space for many reasons. And we feel that based on current fundamentals, the stock presents an excellent value for investors, and we're very excited to bring them to you today. Ventripoint Diagnostics is a commercial stage AI healthcare company that has developed an extremely valuable diagnostics platform, which addresses a very large unmet need in the medical scanning marketplace. Ventripoint's platform enables the massive in-place fleet of two-dimensional ultrasound devices to create highly detailed and accurate three-dimensional views of the heart. Prior to the introduction of Ventripoint's solution, the only way to get this data was using MRI technology, but the use of that equipment to perform this task had a number of significant drawbacks, which we'll cover during this call. These limitations to using MRI to scan the heart have really created a massive market opportunity for Ventripoint to move this platform into the healthcare community in a big way, which we'll also be addressing during the presentation. Ventripoint Diagnostics trades on the OTC market under the ticker VPTDF and on the TSX Venture Exchange under the ticker symbol VPT. Ventripoint shares are currently trading around 19 cents per share US, representing a market cap of roughly $14 million. I feel like every time we have a webinar, that number keeps going up. But we feel that based on the current market cap, there is plenty of upward potential as the company steps up sales of their systems, and as we're seeing by the company's latest contracts. This week in particular has been a pivotal week for the company, which I'm sure George will cover during today's call. With us today to discuss Ventripoint Diagnostics and their growth strategy going forward is the company's Executive Chairman and CEO, Dr. George Adams. Welcome, George.
Glad to be here, Anthony.
Great. I want to welcome you to our virtual lunch, and I want to thank you for taking some time today to bring our viewers up to speed on Ventripoint Diagnostics. Just before we get started, if our viewers have any questions during the presentation, just feel free to click the raise your hand icon and I can unmute your microphone, or you can simply type your question into the Q&A box and I'll make sure we get it to George. With that said, I'll now turn it over to George Adams. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Oh, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to blast here through. I'm happy to answer questions along the line, but just submit them to Anthony and I'll deal with them if there's an opportunity. All right, so Ventripoint has been around for a number of years, and we've been working on an artificial intelligence algorithm that analyzes regular 2D ultrasound images of your heart, echocardiograms, and we analyze all four chambers of the heart, not just the left ventricle. And as we go through, you'll see that that's important in a number of different heart conditions. Our product is US FDA approved in Canada, CE marked in Europe, and also approved in China. So we put our first 11 clinical sites up and running, and we have about 11 more to do. That's slowed down a bit because of COVID. In fact, worldwide, there's been over 80% reduction in echocardiography procedures done. So most echo labs are pretty much only doing emergency cases at this time because of COVID. We anticipate that we'll be able to get more machines into hospitals and clinics as time goes on. And we're trying to get to is 80 to 100 units. That's a inflection point in the industry where you sort of go from early adopters to mass adoption. So we're hoping to get there by mid-2022. And we'll talk about the path to liquidity for our shareholders. So as Anthony mentioned, the gold standard way to get a volumetric measurements on your heart is MRI. And obviously that takes a couple hours in the machine and takes a couple of months to get scheduled. And you have to be injected with material and you have to lie motionless for an hour and a half in the machine. And most people don't make it to the end of the first hour, let alone to the hour and a half. So the heart doctors traditionally use 2D ultrasound everywhere in the world to look at your heart. And it's an okay tool, but it can be better with our analytics. And it's difficult to obtain accurate and reliable volumes of all the different chambers of the heart, especially the right ventricle. And our system does provide all the standard metrics along with the volumetric measurements. And it's often you get blurry images. About 10% of people are not echogenic, as they say, are not really give you bad pictures. And that's just the anatomy of the body and the physics of the heart. So there's not much you can do about that. So our system, oh, no, not this. Oh, maybe this, okay. So basically, we have created a way to use 2D ultrasound and get the same, exactly the same measurements you would get from an MRI. That's been validated by all the regulatory agencies, and we have over 200 scientific publications done by leading cardiologists worldwide, showing that we get exactly the same numbers as MRI in all sorts of different kinds of patients with all sorts of different kinds of heart disease. So there's no doubt that we do. The real advantage here is that it only takes 5 minutes to scan somebody. We now have a system where you can move around during the scan, so you can reposition the patient while you're doing different scans. A standard echo study on the heart is 16 views taken through 4 different windows. So you actually have to shoot the sound between your ribs into look at the heart and get 3 or 4 views from each window. So that usually takes about a half an hour to do, but we find that we can get that done. You just need a couple of views and be able to do our technique on it, and you can get the answers right away. So if you know what you're looking for, you can get it done very quickly. There's no sedation or contrast media that you need injecting to people. Obviously, every echocardiographer has a ultrasound machine. This just couples up to his existing ultrasound machine. And so you can have the test done immediately. The technologist will take the scans. You can have the analysis done in under 5 minutes, and then the cardiologist just look at their numbers and look at the fit of the analysis, and they can make a diagnosis. So they can all happen in the first appointment at the cardiologist's office, as opposed to the MRI, which takes 3 appointments, once to go to the cardiologist, once to go to the MRI, and then back to the cardiologist to get the results. Obviously, big difference in the cost of it. We sell our machine for $50,000 or we lease it. We'll talk about that later, the leasing model. But MRI machine costs $2 to $4 million. It costs $1 million a year to run, and it costs about $30 million for a new wing in the hospital, because you can't have any reinforced concrete anywhere near an MRI machine. So it's a very expensive facility to run. So this is our machines. On the left-hand side, you'll see it's a cart with a computer on it. Most of the magic is in the software, and you can see the operator here in his hand, and in the foreground on the patient's chest is the probe. We have 2 wires coming out. One of those wires goes to the ultrasound machine, which is the big white machine. That happens to be a Philips IE33. And our machine behind that, you see that the operator is pointing more or less towards our machine. And the second wire goes to our machine, and so we can track the position of that probe when they take the images. So we know exactly where that plane is through the heart on all 16 views. And just point out just above the hand, there's a little square white box there. And that's actually, I guess you can see my pointer. Okay, this thing here is it's part of the tracking device as well, and allows the patient to move around. And this is a disposable that we sell. So we do have a recurring revenue through the disposable as well. And I'll talk about that later. So we've been at this for 10 years, spent $3 million. We're on a 3rd generation of the machine, which we call the VMS 3.0. And you can see that, and we now have a machine that everybody loves and loves to use. So this is what a view through, different views through your heart look like. To a trained operator, they can tell which is the left heart, which is the right heart, which is the atriums, and which is the ventricles. A little difficult for somebody who's never seen it, but what we do is take sparse data from those information, as long as we can identify something in there, and we build the model. So here's an example. This is, I'll show you a little video here of exactly how we do it. So this is a slice through the heart. The left side is actually the right side of the heart. The right side is actually the left side. The top is actually the bottom. The bottom is actually the top. It's up, so it's a mirror image and upside down. But that's the way echo machines were built, and so that's what you get. Anyway, we put dots on the parts we can identify, and then we do 2 or 3 different views, and then you get a constellation of dots which we locate in 3-dimensional space. We then use our proprietary catalogs to fit that, make a best fit to those dots, and come back with a mathematical model of exactly what the shape and size of that heart is. And that is 100% identical to what you would get from an MRI. So that's the magic sauce. You can touch any dot in this in the model, and it'll show you the plane that dot exists in, and it also shows you where the plane goes through the heart. And so this happens to be the right ventricle. Much you can see it's not any kind of a uniform shape or anything. You couldn't use a formula to calculate the volume of that chamber of the heart. You have to do what we do and build a model and calculate the volumes. So you can see that what's magical about this is the sonographers and the doctors, they virtually don't know where where exactly the view they're looking at through the heart. They try and take standard views, but everybody's a little different, and they're never really sure exactly what they're looking at. This way they can actually go back and look and see. And that yellow line is called a border, and that's, that they can make sure that border is exactly where they would have thought the heart was in all 16 views if they want. And they can say, yes, this is a very good fit, so I believe the numbers. Give standard numbers, end diastolic volume, the indexes, and systolic volume, ejection fraction, all those standard numbers you get out. So as I said, we've been at this for about a little over 10 years. We've been through the FDA 3 times, first time with right ventricle only, second time for all 4 chambers, third time for the latest device, which is a novel tracking system that we invented and patented. So we now have patents not only from the original University of Washington patent on the algorithm to do the reconstructions, but also on the new tracking system. And we have other patents that we're in the process of filing on novel ways to analyze the heart. So we focused in on some key market segments, and one of those is congenital heart disease. So if you're born with a heart problem, it's almost always the right side of your heart that's messed up, actually, because if you have a problem with your left side of the heart, you don't get born. So it's the right side of the heart that pediatric cardiologists are all focused on, and there's a lot of information on even in the right side of the heart, even for adults who have heart disease, but adult cardiologists tend to focus on the left side of the heart and don't analyze the right, which is something we hope to fix, correct. The standard of care for people with congenital heart disease is, they get multiple surgeries over their years, they get their valves replaced in their teenage years, but now they live to be normal lifespan. And so standard is, the guideline says they should be scanned every three months for the rest of their life to see if they're going to right heart failure. You can die from right heart failure just as easily as you can die from left heart failure. And so these people see a lot, I get scanned a lot, and they don't get good information right now. Scans are basically looking at the right side of the heart and saying, is it about the same size as the left side of the heart, or do you think it's bigger this scan? So it's a very subjective assessment, which we can get hard numbers on, and because we're so accurate and reliable, reproducible, you can compare from one study to another, so you can actually see earlier when a heart is under stress. I mean, the first thing a heart does when it gets stressed, whether it's pumping against extra pressure, whether it's got ischemia, whether it's got congestive heart failure, or it's got endocarditis, or whatever's wrong, the first thing the heart does is get bigger. And so by measuring the volume and shape of the heart, you can tell it's under stress. So you can detect these things earlier, and you can treat them earlier. And as usual, most medical conditions, if you detect it earlier, you treat it earlier, you slow the whole process down so that you don't end up with full-blown congestive heart failure or right heart failure, and in the hospital, every 4 weeks. So next second was pulmonary hypertension. Again, a right heart problem, and this is the kind of thing we're also seeing in COVID now, is that you get congested lungs. On the right side of the heart pumps the blood through your lungs and over to the left side of the heart. Left side of the heart pumps it out to the rest of your body. So, it's a serial pump, right side, left side. And so if you get congested lungs, the right side has to pump harder to get the blood through your lungs. And then again, it gets bigger and it goes into heart failure and you die from right side heart failure. And that's conditions called pulmonary hypertension. And so we have a focus on that. I'll talk a bit. I'll show you some hospitals that are working on those indications. Another one is cardiotoxic effects of chemotherapy. So, anybody who gets chemotherapy for cancer, is about 20 to 30% of those people come out the other side with the cancer in remission. But now you're more likely to die from a heart failure problem, because the same drugs that damage or kill the cancer also damage the heart. And we haven't had new cancer therapy, chemotherapy agents in 30 years. And so, we have millions of people with heart problems as a consequence of the cancer therapy. So we would like to, and they need to be monitored like the people with CHD, every three months, to make sure they're not, and if they start into that heart failure, then be treated appropriately. Same thing's now being true for COVID. We're now finding, 60-70% of people have COVID end up with cardiac inflammation, and a lot of that is right heart enlargements and dysfunction. And so we've seen this before in SARS. I mean, SARS, 15 years now since we had SARS went through, and we still have 10% of those patients have chronic lung and heart problems even today. So hopefully COVID won't be that bad, but we do know that COVID's kind of like chemotherapy, that a certain fraction of people, probably 20 to 30% are going to end up with chronic heart problems. And the last one we just opened up in the last few weeks is companion animals. So, there are 100 million dogs in the United States, and about 10% of them have heart problems. So the same kind of heart problems people do. And so we're now working with the veterinary college in the University of North Carolina to validate our system for dogs and then roll that out into the veterinary world. So heart disease is still the #1 cause of death worldwide for men and women. It's a huge problem. It was over billions of dollars a year spent on new echocardiographic machines to just do the same thing that the other ones did. They don't do anything new. There's just newer machine. And so we hope to make those, basically what we do is turn your, $200,000 cardiac ultrasound machine into a $4 million MRI. So we're rolling this out, and so one of the first ones we put out was in Erasmus Hospital in Netherlands, in Rotterdam. It's the #1 cardiovascular hospital in the world, in Europe. They get referrals from all over Europe, and they're using the machine routinely now on CHD adults and children, as well as a number of different patient groups. The second one we put in was in October in MD Anderson Cancer Center, the #1 cancer hospital in the world for the last 30 years. And they're using it obviously to not only scan people who've had chemotherapy and see how bad their heart problems are, but also during, between therapies, to see if they could slow down, detect the people who are whose hearts are being damaged by the drugs. Because you go through anywhere from 6 to 12 different courses of treatment, depending on the kind of cancer you have. So, and they're spaced out every 2 or 3 weeks. So you have the opportunity to go in there and look and sort and see whose heart is being damaged, and maybe give them a little less drug or space out the procedures a bit more. Those are the kind of things that MD Anderson are using the machine for. We put one into the Peter Munk Center in Toronto. We're located in Toronto. That's the largest cardiovascular center in Canada. And they are an expert in CHD and pulmonary hypertension. So they have a huge pulmonary hypertension clinic, thousands of people. And so they're using it on those kind of patients. And King's College London, is the last one we put in December, and just before Christmas. That's COVID Central. That's a new variant, UK variant, COVID Central. So they have a huge COVID clinic there. So they're using it on their COVID patients, trying to figure out exactly what kind of heart problems they're having, and what kind of therapies might work to alleviate those things. So so 4 months, 4 top hospitals in the world. We have other ones in China. We actually have 10 hospitals in China with version 2 machines. So the go-to-market strategy is pretty much a standard what you would expect for a medical device company. This is my 7th company, so I've been down this cycle before. You get the key opinion leaders, like the people I've just mentioned to you in those key hospitals, using it. They talk about it and talk to their friends about it. We're about to start hosting regional webinars where we're going to have those expert doctors talking on the webinar, doing case studies showing exactly what kind of patients they're using them on. We're also in the process of publishing a white paper on the one major center which has had a VMS for 5 years, version 1, version 2, and now version 3. And they've been using it on a number of CHD children for over 5 years. And so they're going to publish a white paper on their experience over dozens of children over many years, and the value our machine has brought to their ability to manage those children and manage the interventions that they've had to do, valve replacements and different things in those children, and get them done in a timely manner. Because if you leave it go too long, the right heart has a very little ability to recover from insult. And this is one of the concerns from the COVID world is, if you have right heart dilation and dysfunction for months, it may not recover. Like it just, right heart is not good at springing back when you take away the problem. So if you take away the lung congestion, you take away the acute infection of COVID, the right heart may still be damaged, which is what happened with SARS. So obviously there's some history there. So just looking at US, Canada, and Europe, and looking at cancer and pulmonary hypertension and congenital heart disease, you end up with about 40,000 machines would be required to deal with all the patients in those jurisdictions with those conditions. I haven't even put COVID in here because the COVID numbers could be crazy numbers. But anyway, that turns out to be about at $50,000 a machine. That's about $2 billion market. We sell the machine, historically we sold the machine as a capital purchase from the hospital for $50,000 and a $5,000 a year fee for maintenance and accessing the databases and software support. We now have a patch, which is consumable. But we also have now introduced a leasing model where they can lease it for $15,000 a year to get the first 200 cases free. Then after that, it's $50 a case. And that works very well in the United States because they have a reimbursement code already exists. And we've had that validated by the American Society for Echocardiography. It said that the code 76377 is totally valid for what we do. And so the doctor can get paid extra to do what we do over and above just doing the regular echo. They can actually get paid an extra $100 to $200 for doing the procedure. So we're saying we'll take $50 of that and you can keep the other $150. And that has been quite acceptable to all the doctors and hospitals that we've been talking to in the United States. We are eligible to get our own fee for this procedure because we're equivalent to an MRI. The fee that 76377 did not anticipate being able to do a 3D reconstruction getting as good as an MRI. So an MRI, you would get paid $1,200 for what we do as part of the MRI. And so somewhere between $200 and $1,200 is the right number. So we can petition the US government to change the fee, and in talking to reimbursement experts, they're saying $350 to $500 would be a perfectly reasonable expectation to get the fee. So that would make the leasing model very lucrative because we would of course increase our fee from $50 a case to a few $100s a case. So as I said, we've done 11 sites have got these machines, 5 in Canada, 1 in Europe, 1 in the US, and 1 in the UK. And now I showed up this slide. It says there's 10 sites actually in China. We had 3 when I did this. Like Anthony says, every week we do this, numbers keep changing on us. But we really anticipate multiple sales back to those same first users because something like MD Anderson actually has 13 hospitals and they treat 1.5 million cancer patients a year. And to do 1.5 patients a million a year, you would need 1,000 machines. So we really anticipate that this is going to be repeat sales. Later this year, we'll have a number of repeat sales to these top hospitals. And as I said, we're going into the companion animal side of it in the vet world. There's no regulatory there. You don't need anything approved. We're just doing the study in North Carolina to verify that we get exactly the same results as MRI in a dog, in different dog breeds. But what's interesting is and it's working fine. I mean, we've done half a dozen now, and it turns out that our system is perfectly able to, with the human catalogs of hearts, we're perfectly able to get perfect results on dog hearts. So what's really interesting, I thought would be interesting, was that there's 37% of households in the United States have adopted a pet in the last 12 months, according to a Bank of America study. So there's even more need for better health care for companion animals. Another one of these, another one we're looking at is racehorses, because it's been shown, echocardiography is used in elite athletes to look at their heart before and after training and get an idea whether it's being stressed too much or not, and how well it's coping with the training regime. And they do the same thing in horses. So we can give them much better numbers, much more reproducible numbers than they're getting today. So that's another one. And there are actually more veterinary practices. There's 25,000 cardiologists in the United States. There's actually 30,000 veterinarians. So there are more vets than there are cardiologists. So it's a big market. We see our exit opportunities as being acquired by one of the big people. This is just the way the industry works. The reason why Philips, Siemens, and GE are, share the ultrasound market worldwide is because they buy everybody else up. And, and for somewhere between 100 million to $1 billion in the last 5 years, they've bought companies like ours. One is particularly interesting is TomTech, which was bought by Philips for more than $100 million, and they were an analytics company just like us. And they got bought when they had about 80 to 100 sites using their software and their analytics. That's why we've set a target of 80 to 100 sites. We feel that's the inflection point where we will get offers sent our way. There are other people like service providers like McKesson, Circle, and Precision PIA who provide analytical services for MRI and some workflow management software for echo labs. People like McKesson have their workflow management software in over 3,000 hospitals in the United States. So there would be a natural thing for them to be able to offer this software to all of their customers. So, and we have had discussions with them in the past. McKesson actually has TomTech's software. TomTech's a software only product. So they actually have TomTech's software on their platform. So any one of their 3,000 hospitals can just click on and download the TomTech software and use it on a case. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that well, so nobody really does it, but it is there. So they are thinking about how they can offer more services. It's my 11th time around, seventh time around, seventh company I've been the CEO and built, and anywhere from artificial hearts to drug-eluting coronary stents to therapies for ALS and diagnostics for Alzheimer's and all sorts of things I've done over the years. And actually the stuff that I've commercialized has been used to extend the life of over 300 million people in the last 35 years. So I'm very happy with that. I get out of bed in the morning wanting to help another 300 million people, especially children. I mean, I got started in this business 10 years ago, in this particular company 10 years ago, because I saw a procedure where a young child was put in an MRI machine for an hour and a half and had to be sedated and put on a ventilator. And every time they wanted to take a picture with the MRI, they had to clamp the tube on the ventilator and prevent the child from breathing and then take the picture. And what that was just too traumatic for me. So I said, we can fix this. You don't need to do this. And we have. It took us a little longer than we thought, but we have it now. Desmond is our head Chief Technology Officer. He's been 20 years in the business making ultrasound equipment. He came from us previously as the Vice President of Engineering for Sonosite, which was bought by Fuji for $1 billion. And he's the one that why version 3 is so much better than version 2. Elvira is our head of everything, operations and quality control, and she's the one who gets us through the FDA, CE mark, Health Canada, and China. She's miraculously at keeping us on side with all the different regulatory people and running the manufacturing. We do make the machines ourselves. It's just off-the-shelf components, except for the tracking system, which we have custom made for us. It's just a chip, a board, and some software as well. So we can make them. It takes one person about 5 or 6 hours to make one over a period of a week because of a couple of gluing steps and curing steps and things. So, so we can manufacture hundreds of these a month when we need to, when the demand is there. We don't even bother making one until we get an order for it. And Dave McFerden is our head of sales. He's comes from us from Siemens Healthcare, where he was the director of sales there for and sold imaging equipment to hospitals. So he knows the industry very well. So that's a small team, but it's an effective team. So we have a $2 billion opportunity, substantially de-risked in the fact that we have regulatory approvals and we have key opinion leaders using the equipment right now. We have comparables where people get bought out when they get to a certain milestone, and we know what that is, and we do talk to Siemens and Philips and GE and Samsung and Toshiba and Mindray on a regular basis, so we know they know about what we're doing, and we have a proven team of people who've done it before, so we're going to do it again. And the valuation for the company is still amazingly low. It's it's come up significantly in the last month, but it's still $18 million is a ridiculously low valuation for the $2 billion opportunity we have. So I'll stop there. Here's my contact information. If anything comes to mind after this is over, or anybody watching this tape, don't be bashful. Call me up, talk to me, tell me what you're thinking. Over to you, Anthony.
Thanks, George. Great presentation as usual, and it's obviously really exciting what you have going on and the potential for the company to address a very large unmet need in the scanning market space. So I think the stock is reacting to some good news, which I'd like you to expand upon in just a sec. But before that, I just want to open the floor to questions from our attendees. If you have a question, you can either click on the raise your hand icon and I can unmute you, or you can just simply type it into the Q&A box and I'll make sure it is answered. So we'll wait just a moment for a few questions. We already have a few in there. But George, can you, while we're waiting, can you talk about the news this week, specifically how it impacts the company? Because I think it was pretty pivotal in terms of, the long-term view of the company, going forward.
So back in 2019 and 2020, we did have some issues about funding. We keep going. And so we took in money on convertible debentures. So we had ended up with about $2.7 million of convertible debentures. And the news this week was that all of those debentures have now been converted into stock, and all that stock has gone through the market, obviously, and since we've traded 200 million shares or something in January. And also the warrants that were associated with those debentures were at 10 cents. And we've had most of those warrants exercised as well. So we now have 2 years of cash in the bank. And we have another $750,000 or so of warrants that are in the money, still in the money. We're currently trading at 25 cents, and they're all 10 or 11 cent warrants. So we're actually getting, every day I get a bunch more warrants to exercise and some more money in the bank. So, people reacted to the fact that we have more than enough money to hit our 80 to 100 machines in 18 months. And so there's really there's no reason to be concerned about the future of the company. It's just a matter of executing on sales and marketing and rollout. And we are in alliance conversations with some people about helping us with that part of it. And so I hope to have something to say about that in the not too distant future.
Great. Yeah, it's been a great week. I'm just going to go right down the list, George, of the questions that are in so far. Do you have an insurance code for the pet insurance in place? And I would probably think not yet.
No,
It's still in the early stages. So
we're still at North Carolina State University, validating that we get the right numbers. We're not going to put out a product that doesn't work. So yeah, we'll get there. Yeah.
Can you speak to how you stand up against Epica International and their similar product? Are you familiar with Epica?
No, I'm not.
Okay. We'll have to take a look at that, Ryan, and then I will make sure that we get back to you on that.
I was, in terms of competition, we don't have any, there are a number of people out there who have AI approaches to looking at 2D ultrasound images for the left ventricle only. Some people also do the left atrium. I'll just tell you that they don't work on people who actually have defective hearts. They work perfectly fine on normal hearts. But when you start getting, and they certainly wouldn't work at all on a pulmonary, on the right side of the heart. So yes, people do have semi-automated ways to calculate cross-sectional areas, looking at 2Ds. They don't do volumes. So, and again, if you don't know where the scan plane is in a heart, you calculate a cross-sectional volume for your left atrium. You're not sure you're at the equator. You can get any number you want. And so that's part of the problem, that the variability from, one operator doing it, even two operators doing it on the same patient, is plus or minus 10%. Different operator, different day, same patient, plus or minus 15%. Well, plus or minus 15% means the difference between therapy and no therapy. And so they don't, it's all about accuracy and precision and measuring a true volume and not measuring a pseudo number like a cross-sectional area. Okay.
Makes sense. So I'm going to read these verbatim. Is it not possible to update stakeholders for sales by news release? As I saw today, 10 machines installed in China, which if put in news release can be huge for the community. I think as you maybe update the IR portion, the IR side of the website, maybe we should think about an opt-in for news releases to automatically go out.
Yeah, that's part of the new IR part of the website, which will be up on Monday or Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes, you're right. I probably shouldn't have told you about China. Now I'll have to press release it. Yes. Sorry.
So this one says, what am I missing? Based on the revenue model, seems like you're setting the bar low on its potential value, i.e. 100 million. I know you're going after a $2 billion market, correct?
Correct.
So
what am I missing? Well, that's a hard question. Yes, I think $100 million is low, but I also like to underpromise and overdeliver. Like I said, I've been around this block 7 times as a CEO, and I've been on the board of many dozens of small companies who overpromised and underdelivered. So I think at this point, I'm happy saying it's going to be more than 100 million, but how much more? Yeah, I have my own numbers and my own ideas. It really comes down to, if cancer is a very big application, and COVID could be so if cancer and COVID turn out to be as big as I think they are, then yeah, then it'll be multiples on 100 million. But we're still in early days on those particular applications, so we'll see.
Yeah, and 100 million based on the market seems low, but you're right. It's absolutely better to underpromise and overdeliver. Dr. Adams, are you able to provide guidance with how quickly you feel you can reach the 80 to 100 machine sales?
Well, it's on the first slide, so we're saying mid 2020, 18 months from now. is what we're saying. That's the target we have, the company. It's obviously almost impossible to predict given, till COVID gets sorted out. So if the vaccines work, and I think we can get it done in 18 months if the vaccines allow the echocardiography people to get back to work. Part of the problem, one of the actually drivers for us is that we can get this procedures done accurately and quickly. And there's a huge backlog. I mean, there's been almost a year now where echo labs have been essentially shut down. So there's all sorts of people out there who should have been scanned every 6 months, every 3 months, who haven't scanned in 12 months. So when I'm talking to cardiologists, they're saying, how are we going to clear this backlog? We were running flat out before COVID came, just trying to deal with the patient flow. And aging population, a lot of people have heart problems. So, it's more and more demand on the echo suite. Anyway, how are we going to clear a backlog when we don't have any bandwidth to, and on top of that, of course, a number of sonographers and cardiologists have gotten ill from COVID. Some of them have died. And so, it's going to, they're going to need our system just to help deal with all the patients, even beyond, not including COVID. And if you start adding COVID patients in there, I don't know how they're going to cope with all the patients.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, I think, on one of the calls a few weeks ago that they're actually setting up, specific scanning.
Oh, yeah. UK has set up 40 specific clinics for long COVID. So once you get COVID and you recover from the acute infection, and now you've got all these chronic heart problems, you don't confuse the world by going to the emergency ward or anything. They've now set up special clinics. You go there. Also, because they're now developing expertise on what's the right therapy. They have doctors now already specializing on post-COVID infection cardiology, and they're doing that in the United States too. There's Cedars-Sinai in California is setting up a dedicated post-COVID echocardiography suite. Yeah. So yeah, you're going to see that all over the United States, all over Canada too. You're going to start seeing dedicated clinics. In fact, they're setting one up at Sunnybrook just down the street here in Toronto.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like COVID is going to be a nice secondary market for the company as people are dealing with long-term issues.
I mean, if you look at the numbers in the United States, before they get the vaccine rolled out, there's probably going to be 100 million people who have been infected.
Yep.
And if the data from the literature is pretty strong, it's 40 to 60% have acute problems, and about 25% will have chronic problems. Well, that's 25 million people you're going to add to the heart disease world. There's only about 10 million people in the United States that have full-blown heart disease and are in and out of hospitals. So you're going to, 25 million more is going to absolutely overwhelm the system. They need a faster way to assess these people, and we represent that.
Can you provide any color this week regarding progress with your Chinese partner and the Alberta group who was acquiring shares a few weeks back?
Well, we have, we trade so many shares. I have no idea who acquiring and who's selling. And obviously somebody has to buy and someone has to sell. And when you're doing 10 million a day, who knows? So I can't really comment on that. In terms of our Chinese partners are building a network to put out the machines. They built a factory already in Manshan, and they've had it certified by the Chinese FDA. And they're following, GMP guidelines and everything in China. So they're making out Chinese parts. So they're not using Western parts. They're using Chinese sourced parts. And but machines work perfectly well. But they're only on version 2. They haven't gotten started on version 3 yet. They're not approved for version 3. Just version 2 and just right ventricle in China. So they're moving much slower than we are, and that's about all they'll let me say. They have these, as I've said earlier, they have these 10 machines out in 10 significantly large hospitals all over China. Some of them are demonstration units. They're just trying them out, and so they have targets for what they're going to sell this year, but I'm not going to disclose that. but I think we will, when right now they're doing through a financing over there. So they're trying to raise some money to really launch the product all over China. And so when they get that financing finished, I think we'll be able to give more information.
And when do you think, are you guys focused on getting approval? Like, I know that China will only let you do a certain scan right now. What are the, is there a timeline or time frame on when you think they will have the same sort of approval that we have here in the US?
They haven't given me a timeline. They say they're, and every time I've ever gotten a timeline for China, it's been totally, I mean, yeah, I think that's just China. I don't think it's our partners. They work hard every day to try and get things through the Chinese bureaucracy, but the Chinese bureaucracy is pretty thick. So, predicting when something will go, the next version will come out of the Chinese FDA is nothing like. We typically go through the US FDA. We know it takes 45 days for us to get approval through the US FDA. And, sometimes it's 43, sometimes it's 48, but it's roughly 45 days. China, it took them 2.5 years to get the first version 2 approved for right ventricle only through the Chinese FDA, 2.5 years. So I have no idea when it will get through. It'll be slower than you think. That's all I know.
Okay. Hi, George. Glad to see the turnaround in the company. I'm wondering if VMS 3.0 can be copied or duplicated by a competitor. I guess, can you talk about your patents?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not so much patents as proprietary information. So the catalogs are all proprietary. It took us, we had to buy those images that are in the catalog from people who agreed to sell them to us, from the patients. They're all high resolution echo and MRI images. So it takes a long time to get those kind of agreements put together and buy them. Secondly, the original patent on the algorithm, the KBR algorithm, which came from the University of Washington, is now public domain. So, but we still pay a small royalty to Washington because of all of the other intellectual property that we got along with that patent. And really, we've augmented that so much over the years that if you attempted to practice the patent now, you would get to about only 80% accuracy, which is useless. So, until you get to 100% accurate MRI, you're not going to do echoes and try and calculate what we do. So we estimate it take about 3 to 5 years to reproduce what we did, and you'd have to have some very smart people do it, because we have had lots of smart people working on an algorithm over the years, and but no one's ever tried, and I think part of that reason is because everybody believes that someday they're going to get the 3D hardware, so you can take one picture, a holographic picture, a 3-dimensional picture of your heart, and that heart picture is going to be clear enough that you can actually analyze it and get good numbers. And that's been the dream for 15 years. So the 15 years we've spent showing that you can get 3-dimensional information using sparse data from even ugly, bad, blurry as hell 2D slices. In the same 15 years that GE, Siemens, Philips, Samsung have all been working on better and better imaging hardware to try and get better and better 3D pictures, hoping that someday they can make that a usable clinical tool. And they haven't made it. They've made progress over the last 15 years, and they spend billions of dollars doing that, but it's not good enough yet. In the same time, we have shown that you can get that information from 2D, and they'll always need 2D. And as I said, there'll always be 10 or 20% of people who give bad images just because of the anatomy of the body and the physics of sound. And so you're never going to get a good 3D scan on there. So it'll always be 20% of the population you're going to have to use 2D on it, 2D echo on anyway. So we actually think we can accelerate the use of 3D because we can actually analyze 3D images, blurry 3D images. And so we might be able to get it from, right now it works about 65% of the time on all comers, and probably only about 30% of the time on actually sick hearts. So most of scanning gets done. People are more or less normal. So, it needs to get to an 80% usability, 80% feasibility to be used as a clinical tool. So let's say they're at 65, they need to get another 15%. I think we can get them the other 15%. And we're now in the process of doing that study with one of the leading cardiologists here in Canada to show that we can, using our sparse data approach, analyze 3D echoes and get good numbers, even when they're so-called unreadable echoes. And so we should have some data on that in 3 or 4 months. And I think that would be a huge catalyst to go back to any of the big three and say, you've spent billions developing 3D equipment you can't sell. We can actually make it usable. So you could sell more 3D, and that they would love that, because they're not getting a decent return on all that work they've done, because everybody knows 3D just doesn't work often enough to use it on every patient in the door. But the holy grail there again is one scan. So you put it in the apex, click, it takes you 3 seconds to get an image. You're done. Right now, as I told you, standard 2D echocardiogram procedure is 25 to 30 minutes. And the hospitals, everybody wants it. If you could get that down to 5 minutes, wow. Well, that, then you can deal with the backlog and deal with all that stuff. But
and get a more accurate scan.
Yeah, and if it only works half of the time,
yeah,
it's not worth doing. And it actually takes a long. I mean, one of the things our advantages we have is it takes we train people to do what we do in a few hours. It takes months to be any good at collecting 3D ultrasound images. Again, that's just the way the hardware works. And it also takes over a year to get trained on how to analyze MRI images. We can analyze MRI images. We can teach you to analyze an MRI image, which is so high contrast, clear image. We can teach anybody to do it in 2 hours and get the right answer. So, so that's a huge selling feature, because these doctors and sonographers do not have 6 months to learn a new technique. They barely have enough time to have lunch.
Thank you for that. And can you share what the pay-per-use numbers are in the US so far?
That was on the slide. It's $98 to $200, depending on whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or a third-party payer like Aetna or those guys. And as I said, our reimbursement expert said we should be able to get that up to $350 to $500. We just need 3 centers to write a white paper and show the value in use. And obviously MD Anderson is one of those centers will show value in use in a cancer application. And then we have lots of other major centers in the United States want to get the equipment. Right now they're shut down because of COVID, so we can't deliver it, but they can't receive it. We could deliver it, but they can't receive it. So so we'll get that probably in, again, probably a year's worth of work to get get them in, get enough patients, and write up the white papers and submit them and get the reimbursement moved up. But that's the plan.
How long do you anticipate the validation with pets will take?
Well, it's, we're only going to do it 20 or 30 dogs, so it shouldn't take it should take a couple of weeks. But unfortunately, they have their own COVID issues. The university has shut down the research labs because of COVID. So again, COVID is when they get to it, it'll only take a few weeks.
Yeah.
They can't even go to the lab right now.
Are you considering a NASDAQ listing?
Nope.
Okay, and I think this is going back to the question I just asked, where he said, can you share what the pay-per-use numbers are in the US so far? Maybe he's trying to clarify, how often is the pay-per-use model being used?
Well, we've only got one machine in the United States right now, and that's at MD Anderson, and they bought it. So they're not a pay-per-use customer. So we have, I think, 4 or 5 major centers in the United States who want the leasing model and the pay-per-use model. We haven't got any, as I said, they're not able to receive equipment right now. We can remotely install it, calibrate it, and teach them how to use it. We don't have to go anywhere near the hospital, but they're totally focused on COVID, so there's no way to get it into the hospital right now.
Gotcha. Okay,
But
I think, go
what we
ahead.
have had, we have had, went through the process of validating that, that code, if you read that code, it's exactly what we do. You create a three-dimensional model from 2D slices. It's exactly what we do. So there's no doubt that people can build the code.
Sure. I think that's going to do it for the questions. So I think we're at a time where we can wrap it up. But I just want to thank George for coming on today. We really appreciate you getting us up to speed on Ventripoint's lead product and anticipated milestones. And we look forward to hearing more news as you expand the footprint of your VMS 3.0 whole heart analysis system. And again, this was such a great, pivotal week for the stock, and we look forward to more news happening here in the short term.
Okay,
And
good. Well,
so, yeah, if you have any questions, again, just feel free to reach out to George, or you can reach out to me, Anthony Alaka at Torrey Hills Capital. And if you need any additional information on Ventripoint Diagnostics, you can visit the website at ventripoint.com and get details on the VMS 3.0 system, as well as access to press releases. And it looks like they're revamping the IR portion. When next, you said Monday, George?
Well, Monday or Tuesday, yeah, I don't know. The holdup is me.
Okay.
Life as a CEO, everything is up in your desk. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, it'll be next week sometime, it looks like. So I would definitely recommend visiting the website, and I'm looking forward to visiting it and checking out the new IR section. So we want to thank everyone again for your time to get up to speed on Ventripoint Diagnostics, and we look forward to your attendance at a future podcast presentation produced by Torrey Hills Capital. Until then, everyone be safe and be well, and George will do this again real soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.